Hey, what's up, Jeepers? I promised a video on putting the V8 in the Jeep, so here we go. Let's dig in. Jeep Psychology 101, V8 Installation 101. Start by raising the hood. Lay it back against the windshield. Then drain all of your engine coolant, transmission fluid, power steering fluid. Once you've performed those steps, go ahead and remove the front fenders and the radiator grill shell and radiator. Go ahead and just use a Sawzall to get rid of your old exhaust system. You won't be needing it anymore. Before you unbolt and drop the skid plate, remove your rear drive shaft. Take a speed square and make a mark so you know where your transmission ends. Use a speed square holding it firmly against the tail of the output shaft. Let the speed square extend up to the transmission tunnel like a pointer. Then scribe the underside of the transmission tunnel. You'll use this as a reference point in positioning your transmission engine assembly within the body. Obviously this is already done. I can't go back and re-show you, but there is a scribe mark here where our tail shaft used to be. This was before we removed the tail shaft and went to the super short slip yoke eliminator. But drop the drive shaft, mark the location of your transmission. Once you've got your reference marks, go ahead and support the tail of the transfer case with a floor jack and take the skid plate off. Disconnect any shift linkages, throttle cables, and wiring harnesses necessary to remove the old engine and transmission assembly. Then unbolt the engine mounts, and with an engine hoist, remove the entire engine and transmission assembly. At this point, you're ready to cut off your old engine mounts. And if you choose to have full suspension travel, it's time to install the 3-inch body lift kit on the There are 5 spacers per side. The 3 that are obvious, then 1 above the gas tank, and 1 just forward of the rear bumper. Once you've done this, raise the engine and transmission again and support them in position using your reference marks off the tail shaft that you made earlier. This will put the engine and transmission in the correct position. If you're in the correct position, you should only have about 1 inch between the passenger side head and the firewall. Now it's time to reinstall your grill shell and radiator assembly. And make sure you've got clearances between your water pump and your pulleys. Make sure that your engine doesn't have to shift to the rear just a little bit. You need enough space for your belt tensioner and your water pump pulley to work properly without interference. This is a very tight fit. We have approximately 1/4 of an inch between the motor on our radiator fan and the front pulley of the water pump. In order to achieve this, now this is a 4-core aluminum radiator. Okay, it's readily available on eBay and Amazon from a place called Alloy Works. They're relatively inexpensive, about $300, and I will tell you that the configuration that they come in is for a Chevy small block or a Chevy LS installation, which means that the fan is going to be on the wrong side. It's actually a very easy fix. You merely take the fan shroud, flip it over. There's a little bit of fabrication. Those louvers used to face downward. Reality is heat rises, so they should be facing upward anyway to help move more heat out of the radiator and get it out, get it up through the hood louvers. The second thing that's really important about the placement of the engine, back here, and what I'm trying to show you here is the firewall clearance. The engine is no more than 1 inch forward from the firewall. So your best procedure on this is going to be to get your engine mocked up and in place. Once you've got the engine in place with the radiator assembly, jockey everything forward and backward to get your desired clearance between the firewall and the water pump pulley and the cooling fan motor. I would remove and replace the fan that came with the radiator in favor of the Flexolite that I used before you ever weld the engine mount. If I had a preference, I would cheat the engine toward the firewall, leaving more clearance for the pulleys and the electric fan motor of the radiator fan. This will ensure that you have no clearance issues between your water pump pulley and your cooling. If you've made it this far, congratulations, it's time to weld in the motor mounts. I fabricated these out of 3/16 steel. They're designed to mount on the top and the inside edge of the frame rail, and also to raise the engine 3 inches above what would normally be stock position. As you can see, we did have to notch them for clearance for the upper control arms, but your only other alternative is to use hockey pucks and limit your upward travel. Granted, this is extreme. This is only if you were to completely bottom out the front suspension, but I would rather have the suspension travel. While you're on the driver's side, you're going to need to make this piece to support the steering column bearing. It's made from 2x2 square tubing, 1x2 rectangular tubing, and a piece of flat plate. As it turned out, we had to construct a box that was 3 inches tall, because the transmission we used out of the 2004 Dodge Ram, your stock skid plate on a TJ is your transmission mount. Easy enough. What we did was we added these 2 slotted holes. We drilled them, we connected them, made a place where we can get through, and used the 2004 Dodge Ram manual transmission mount, and we just basically fabricated and welded a 3-inch high box to mount it on to raise it that 3 inches. Okay, the welds are a little better over here. As I said, I'm a Sparky. I'm not a welder. I can wire it. My life has been spent keeping the sparks on the inside, not letting them out on the outside. Another thing that you're going to have to modify to do this, depending on the exhaust system that you have. Now, we found some headers that would work, but unfortunately, during the time that we were building this, we had to forego them because they were almost a year out. So what we did was we cut the seam where the body mounts together, and we went in with a little buzz box and stitch welded that in and coated it with some seam sealer. Basically made a notch for the exhaust pipe to come down back where necessary. Now, somebody may know of or have access to a different factory exhaust manifold that would actually dump in front of the starter, which would be okay too, and would probably actually be preferred. But that would have it dropping down here and then running then underneath the starter with a little gentle bend, which would probably be better. Okay, I think I found what hit. Another major modification that you're going to have to make, especially if you've got a stick shift, as the Mistress was originally a 2.5 liter 5-speed manual transmission. This nice little fabricated black plate here is where the shifter used to be. Now, the new transmission, because the transmission that's in a 2.5 will not bolt up to any other Chrysler engine. It is a unique bell housing. So what you're going to have is a transmission out of something that was V8 and Chrysler, obviously, duh. So what we came up with was an NV3500 out of a 2004 Dodge Ram. Now there's an alternate transmission that can work as well, which is an NV3550. The only difference between the two, the NV3550 has a detachable bell housing. The NV3500 does not. It is a one-piece casting for the housing, even though it's a manual transmission. It has a housing more like an automatic transmission. And you will have to cut about a 6-inch diameter hole right up in under here. Your best bet, remove the console and you can go in and you can cut a hole. Like I said, it's about 6 inches diameter. It's far enough forward that it just barely connects with your existing rounded rectangle hole for the transmission that came out of the 4-banger. Now, I can't tell you about a 4.0 because I have not seen a 4.0 with a stick shift. They have an automatic. You're probably going to have to come up with some cable linkage changes to make that work. Maybe, maybe not. It may be a direct bolt-in. But if you're going from manual to manual, you're going to have to get a truck transmission. In order to do that, we trimmed, and I did some metal fab underneath, and then stretched just the 2004 Dodge Ram, the shifter boot, stretched it around, glued it with automotive trim adhesive, and clamped it together for a couple of days, and kept a heat gun on it for quite a while to essentially change its shape. And we did have to put a little bend in the shifter itself, but the end result is it gives you a real nice trail position for the shifter, which I'm going to hop in here and shut the door. You'll have to excuse the mess. There's tools and stuff like that. And try to get far enough away for you to see this, but it makes it a real nice, easy reach from the steering wheel to the shifter. There's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and of course reverse. But it puts it like right at your fingertips where it's just a short move off the steering wheel onto the shifter, which, believe me, is real nice when you're wheeling it. While it's impossible to cover every little detail of a 7-month build in a 30-minute video, hopefully I gave you enough information to set you on the right path. And if there's something that I missed, something that you'd like covered in more detail, please drop me a line in the comments and let me know. And meanwhile, just remember Jeep. Just explore every path. Keep on Jeeping on.